Hello, everyone. Good night from Lisbon. So it's a pleasure to be here representing Startup Lisboa, and the goal today is to tell you a little bit more about what we have been doing during this pandemic crisis, how we have been responding, and also how we have been helping the ecosystem to tackle the developments and the challenges that we are facing in this challenging period. Just now going to share my screen. Okay. Let me see if it's possible. Here we are. I think everyone is seeing my presentation right now. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, the goal today is to share what we have been doing to help the startups and the ecosystem during the pandemic. This is very based on our experience, but maybe starting explaining who we are and what we do. So we have been here since day one on the Portuguese ecosystem, and we are kind of responsible for its creation. This is the question that we hear all the time. Everyone is asking us who came first, us or the local ecosystem, but we always say that the entrepreneurs are the ones that came first. And we have been here since 2012 helping entrepreneurs to grow and develop their businesses. As I said, our mission is very much focused on two main dimensions. One of them is obviously helping startups to develop and grow their business, while the other element is also to help the city of Lisbon to be seen as innovative, entrepreneurial, and creative. And then on everything we do, we try to respond to these two main dimensions, and that's why we have been so active during this pandemic period. Are just some of the numbers that we have in the program. I will just not spend a lot of time, but I think that can give you an idea about us and the work that we have been developing. Just a little bit more about us. So we run an incubation program that's open every year. We do 4 calls per year. We receive more than 100 applications every quarter. Our acceptance rate is between 3 to 5%. And that's basically what we do. And as far as value proposition, as of today on the portfolio, we are currently working with more than 100 startups, which represents more than 250 founders. 40% or a bit more than 40% actually are international startups. So we deal with a very international ecosystem. And also at the same time, our mentorship network is composed by more than 130 people. We help startups in 5 main dimensions: investment, so providing them access to investors; partnerships, by providing our startups access to top-notch partners; and mentorship, access to a curated network of people that could share their expertise and skills; communication, and more important than everything, our community. We are also building a massive project here in Portugal called the Hub Criativo do Beato, which is going to be one of the largest startup and innovation and tech scene hubs in Europe. And COVID-19 happened for everyone. What we did, we had to respond very quick. Actually, at Startup Lisboa, we were one of the first places in the country having a positive case, which means that we had to respond very quickly. So one of our founders were actually hospitalized for a while, which was something very serious for us, and that obliged us to provide a quick response. So our contingency plan was released very early in March. We have been basically following all the measures and protocols that have been defined by the World Health Organization, but also with the local entities here in Portugal. More important than this, it's actually the work that we have been doing on our case. Just to give you like a very quick blueprint, So the government here in Portugal launched several measures at the beginning of the pandemic. So moratorium mechanisms for loans to avoid defaults. Also created layoff mechanisms, so companies could be helped or could be allowed to retain their talent and to keep paying the salaries. There was a bunch of credit lines that were created to help companies, and there was some specific credit lines that were created to support some specific sectors like tourism. Some tax obligations were postponed, and basically the decision and the allocation of EU grants and resources was speeded up, which was also something important. On the startup side, there was a package that was designed by our government to help the startups. To help the HR, some startup voucher, which is kind of a local measure to help early stage entrepreneurs, was also extended. It was created an incubation voucher also to help startups paying for their incubation service. That's something very important to help entities like ours during this pandemic. And the local players like Portugal Ventures, which is kind of one of the largest VCs, were actually creating several strategies to help the people during this period. As far as the work and what we have been developed, we have been working at multiple levels. We have been working with the government. So some of the measures that I outlined just a while ago, we were like other incubators directly responsible to provide some of the suggestions that were accepted. Unfortunately, not all the suggestions that we have provided were accepted, and they are now in practice. But we try to provide outputs that would be valuable and that could actually help the ecosystem during this period. At the same time, we have been also working a lot with the Lisbon Council. The Lisbon Council has decided to design and to propose 15 measures at the beginning of the pandemic. Some of them are related with the rent suspension, the reinforcement of the Social Innovation Fund, acquisition of fresh goods from local groceries and farmers, reinforce the existing investment plan of the city. But more important than that, we have been involved in two main dimensions. One of them, or two initiatives, one of them was the creation of a specific task force to help small and medium enterprises, but also startups, with the idea in mind of thinking already about what's going to be the digital transformation that most of these businesses would need to suffer to face the post-COVID era. And at the same time, we were also involved in the creation of a marketplace of services and solutions provided by startups to help local companies during this period. As I said, we have been working a lot on different things from government with the Lisbon's city council, but more important than that, we have been working a lot with startups, namely with our startups, but not only with our startups. So kind of this is kind of some of the initiatives that we have developed since the pandemic has started. So as I explained at the beginning, since we had to deal with one of the first COVID cases in Portugal, we had to activate immediately our emergency plan, which led us to basically send everyone home and suspend all the incubation fees that we were charging to our startups. After this, what we did was kind of create a risk assessment exercise so we can understand who would be the startups that would be more exposed to the pandemic and what type of support we would need to provide to them. So basically, we assess everyone, we schedule regular calls with all the teams. We were just trying to understand in which stage they are, how much were the runway, what were the key challenges that they were facing, how can we help them during this period, what were the situation that they were facing. So we were very, very, very hands-on during this period. Another thing that we have done, which I believe that was also very important, was reaching out to all of our partners and try to renegotiate with them some of the perks and the benefits that they were currently offering to our startups. And that was great to see that everyone respond in a very helpful way. So everyone was trying to provide more and more perks and more benefits that could just help startups to survive during these periods. We basically change our incubation program 100%. So we used to do a lot of remote activities in the past from time to time, because as I explained it in the beginning, we are dealing with a very global community. So either mentors or partners or even startups were sometimes not in the country with us, which also led us to have this remote way of doing things. But since the pandemic, we were fully remote on everything: office hours, workshops, and even our social dynamics. So which was kind of a challenge that we were facing, how most of the activities that we were doing and we were creating could be turned out and be remote. And to be quite honest, there were initiatives that were impossible to do the same way in a remote way. They just don't fulfill the purpose. But other initiatives were possible to change and to be remote, and we have been doing that. We also launched a website to help people work remotely. Here in Portugal, I would say this is not the standard. I've been working in different countries, and working remote was nothing. It was nothing new for me. I already knew, and I was already adapted to this. So personally, I didn't have any problem. But we saw even inside of our team that people needed some time to adjust and to be able to adapt to this new reality. And that's why we have decided to launch a website that allows people just to be ready to have access to some tips and some best practices while working remote. This was very important at the beginning of the pandemic because no one was expecting to be in a lockdown. Nowadays, I think everyone is much more adjusted, but the website is still running and we are still updating the information on a regular basis. Also, what we did was we launched a special COVID area in our website, not that much with advice on things that needed to be done, but more trying to show the examples of our startups, how they have changed and pivot their business models and their operations to be able to respond to the challenges brought by the COVID. Fortunately, we have a few examples or several examples in the portfolio that provide a very important role on the response that has been given to help people that were on the front line, helping the startups to or helping the people actually during this pandemic period. I can briefly comment about 2 or 3 examples. One of them was one of our startups, call it Lugit. Basically, they are a company that is offering a solution to basically move luggage from tourists when they arrive to the city, so they can have a better experience while visiting a specific area. Obviously, with the pandemic, this was a situation that was very impacted since there was no flights and there was pretty much no tourism. They changed and they use their platform to not moving luggage from one place to the other, but to move goods. And that was very important. In some specific areas, they were actually able to help a lot of people. So that was, for instance, an example that we are very proud of. I can also comment about another one, which is coming from another startup in our portfolio, call it Climber. They have a revenue management system for hotels. And during the pandemic, they basically create a response to help doctors and nurses that were on the front line, and basically they talk with their hotels so they can use the capacity that they were having to basically host these medical people and this medical staff during the pandemic. So these people could have a place to spend the nights and not going home and expose their families to infection. So that's kind of another example how We have been grabbing some of the startups that we have on the portfolio, but I just comment two, but there were much more. So Indie Campers, which is a kind of an alumni, they were also providing and using their camper vans for social purposes and trying to help people that needed a place to sleep, either doctors, medical staff, or people that were on the need of having a place to spend the night and avoid potential exposure to the virus. So yeah, it's a very interesting area on our website where we are trying to put as much content as possible in a very positive way, so startups could understand what's going on, but also to see how we are responding to the challenges. We are also very much involved in a task or a task that we have been doing with the city council called Lisboa Empreende Mais, which is kind of the city's response to the economic challenges that we are facing. So we have a crisis department that is on a regular basis working with startups from all over the city, not only from Startup Lisboa, but basically we talk to all the startups, and we have a communication channel that is open for all the startups in the city, and they can just look for us to try to understand what initiatives have been released, what's new on the law, what benefits or incentives they can have access, what are the timelines of some of the measures that I've just described above, if they haven't been released or not, when it's expected to be released, what's going to be the process for them to apply. So we believe that's something quite important. So we have been also providing that response, and at the same time we were also part of the one of the biggest initiatives that were created in our ecosystem, and we would even say in the tech world here in Portugal, that mobilized a lot of people, which was the Tech for COVID. We were part of some of the projects that were created there, and with the idea of mind of trying to help as much as we can. So in a nutshell, this is my presentation, but I would probably spending some time talking a little bit more about us, and why these challenges and why this period have been so complicated for us, and what we have been doing. This, I think, for everyone, as I was saying, this came out of nowhere. If I was saying that we were prepared to deal with this, I would be lying. We were not prepared. We were not expecting to have anything like that. It was very important for us, and I'm saying this not in a bad sense, but and I'm very glad that the situation with our founder worked very well. But it was kind of high open period or high open moment when we discovered that we had someone from our community that we know very well that was infected, because that was the moment that we understand that the pandemic was real, which was something that we didn't overestimate since day one, and that was actually a moment that was very important for us, because it mobilized not only our team to provide a quick response, but also mobilize our founders and our startups to have a good attitude and to take it very seriously. We release and we send everyone home on a day, and the next day there was no one at the office. And I believe that was actually very important for us to being able to manage the situation in a better way. One of the challenges that we have been facing, and that was actually part of our experience. We have been spending a lot of time talking with the founders to understand what were the challenges that they were facing. We see challenges in three main dimensions. One of them were on the fundraising aspect. So everyone that was raising money at some point was very, very impacted by this situation, either because the rounds were cut at the half, or the term sheets all of a sudden they were not that friendly for founders, and investors were asking for more rights and for more I would say conditions that they were not asking before. So that was one of the things that we have seen. Also, everyone was impacted on a business perspective, and there were sectors that were seriously impacted. In our program, I would say we don't have we are quite agnostic, but there are two or three sweet spots and sweet areas that we have in the program, and they are tourism, retail, and food and beverage. And this was probably the industries that were more impacted by the COVID. So the projects that we have on that area, they were very, very impacted. Everyone, or pretty much everyone, went from having revenues for not having any type of revenues at all, and just spending money to maintain the structure. That was a challenge. That was a big challenge, and it's still a big challenge, because not everyone has not everyone went back to their regular track record. The economy is still recovering, and we now, with the deconfinement, we are getting there, but there are a lot of things that are still stopped. That was a huge effort, because we didn't have such a big team, and what we did was we were literally we jumped on their teams. So most of the time, what we tried to do was just being there, working with them, talking with them, finding ways of creative solutions for them, using our personal networks to create some type of solutions, and that was kind of important for the work that we do. And I believe that our startups, they are praising a lot what we are doing. Another area where we have seen challenges is actually on the measures that were announced by the government. So our government back in April, they decided to, or they released a startup package to help our startups. Unfortunately, we are in July, and not all the measures are now in practice, and that is creating a lot of frustration to the people, because they are just like waiting for this help, and for some of them, they are literally waiting for a miracle to come so they can survive for a few months. We all know when dealing with startups, we do not control pretty much anything apart from time. And having time running, and not having the resources that were promised, has been creating a lot of frustration, and even difficulties to some of our startups. So this is something that we have been fighting a lot in the channels that we have, either with the Portuguese public institutions that have a say on these topics, but also on the government challenges channels. So we have been trying to push for this as much as we can. Another challenge that was particularly difficult for us was the fact that all the measures and all the initiatives that were being released for the Portuguese economy, they were in Portuguese, and the fact that almost half of our community is non-Portuguese speaker, that also put us on a situation where we were actually translating to them a lot of the insights from very, very big documents and measures that were released by the government. We were successful on doing this, because we have actually an amazing group of partners, and we reach out to everyone during this period, and they were very, very helpful, from law firms to tech firms to accounting firms. Everyone has been very, very helpful, and no one is thinking about how much money they can make on the situation. Everyone is actually, okay, let's try to save what we have been building over the last 8 years, and make sure that everyone survives, and we will be here to keep running our companies and to keep running our dreams, so we can be successful. So those have been the challenges that we have been facing. We believe that the response that we have provided was solid, and was helpful for our startups. We now, with the deconfinement, are seeing that the founders are dealing much better with the situation. But this is going to take some time. The best example that I can give is probably the one related with our space. So since the confinement was released here in Portugal, or namely in Lisbon, our offices have been open since the beginning of June. Today I was at our offices, and basically there was just like 5, 6 startups there. So everyone is managing this at their own pace. Remote work is going to be a thing in the future. We have to find us incubators, accelerators, or people that is managing spaces for people to work, like co-works or co-livings or whatsoever. How we are going to deal with this new model in the future. One of the things that we have been trying to do or to understand is how we can create social moments during this period. At Startup Lisboa, we used to have a lot of social gatherings and social moments where founders were sharing knowledge, or sometimes we were just like having some beers together and talking about our challenges and what we need to do to on a specific topic, or sharing knowledge or whatsoever. And it's been very difficult to promote those social dynamics. We are still trying to understand what we can do from September onwards. If people in September would be, or they are not going to be that much confident to go back to the offices, and if it's going to be possible to run things normally or into this new normal. So let's see what's going to happen. Priority for us is, and it's going to be always, our startups and our founders. That's what we have been doing all the time. And basically, we have been working with the founders on a regular basis to make sure that they are prepared for what's coming. So we have been helping them to look for money from investors where we were not looking for money in the past. We have been helping the ones that are pivoting their business models. We have been helping them doing that exercise, so they are actually ready for what's coming. So that's basically the work that we have been developing. So in a nutshell, just to summarize my intervention, Startup Lisboa, I think we have done what pretty much all the incubators and accelerators to whom I have been in constantly contact with have done. I'm not sure if we done it better or we have done it in a wrong way. What we did was actually something that was needed. So we worked at 3 levels. So we work with the startups, we work with the founders. That was extremely important to understand what were the challenges and what were the needs that they were having. Then we work at the city level to understand how the local economy was being impacted, and what type of role could we take, and what type of initiatives can we design to help and to serve both angles of our mission, not only the one that is helping startups to grow and to develop, but also how we can keep the Lisbon ecosystem alive and healthy. So, and having the inputs from our startups was tremendously important. For instance, the initiative of designing a marketplace where startups are providing their services to the local companies was extremely important. And finally, we also have worked with the government and use our institutional channels to make sure that the messages that we were getting on the ground were listened in the channels and by the people that needed to listen to them. So the situation could be actually different, and could be already some action from these institutional players. There's a lot of things to be done. I think the actual challenge is just starting right now. What we did now was managing a crisis and responding the best way we can. but now the world has changed, and what we have to do is to find a way to deal with this new world and be prepared for doing business in a different way, because things will change, and we need to do what startups are the best doing, which is run our product market fit, iterate with this new market and this new way of doing things and doing businesses, and try to understand how we can succeed and how we can help them to be successful. So this is our experience. Hope this was useful, and this was an important message for everyone. We are available for always to talk with founders and other players like us that are facing similar challenges. On the presentation there was my contact, so feel free to reach me out, and best of luck for everyone. Thank you.